I'd spent 15 years building a life with my wife, only to discover her secret on the eve of our anniversary. When she leaned in to kiss me that night, I said the 7 words that made her freeze in terror. "I'd kiss you, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." Her face went pale as death. She never expected me to find those messages. She never thought I'd walk away from everything we built. She was wrong. My name is Jerome Mitchell. I'm 47, and I own a small but once successful renovation company in Portland. For 15 years, I poured my heart and soul into building that business. And for 14 of those years, I thought I was building a rock-solid marriage alongside it. Funny how things can fall apart faster than they come together. When the housing market took a nosedive last year, so did my company. Contracts dried up overnight. Customers canceled projects. I had to let go of 3 good men, guys with families to feed. The stress was eating me alive. Every night I'd come home with that knot in my stomach, wondering if tomorrow would be the day I'd have to close up shop for good. Vanessa, my wife, seemed supportive at first. She'd pour me a whiskey, listen to me vent about the day's disasters, tell me things would turn around. But as weeks turned into months with no improvement, I noticed the change. Her eyes would glaze over when I talked about work. She started taking more girls' nights out. Our conversations got shorter, our silences longer. "You need to figure something out, Jerome," she said one night, not even looking up from her phone. "We can't keep living like this." "I'm trying," I told her. "You think I'm not trying?" She just sighed and walked out of the room. I chalked it up to the financial strain. Vanessa was used to a certain lifestyle. Her job at the advertising agency paid well, but we'd built our life on 2 incomes. Now she was carrying more than her share, and I figured she resented it. That's normal, right? Temporary rough patches happen in every marriage. So I doubled down, worked longer hours, took on smaller jobs I'd normally pass on, slashed my prices to keep some cash flowing. I was exhausted all the time, but I was determined to right the ship for my business, for our marriage. What I didn't know then was that while I was breaking my back trying to save our future, Vanessa had already found herself an escape route. It was our anniversary coming up, 15 years. Despite everything, I want to make it special. Show her I hadn't forgotten what mattered. Remind her why she fell in love with me in the first place. I made reservations at Riverside, the fancy place downtown where I'd proposed to her. Maybe a night away from our problems would help us reconnect. I had no clue that this anniversary dinner would be the last one we'd ever have. I spent the week before our anniversary busting my ass on a small kitchen remodel job that would barely cover a mortgage payment. My hands were raw, my back was killing me, but I kept pushing through. Every cabinet I installed, every tile I laid, I thought about Vanessa's face lighting up when I told her about the reservation. The morning of our anniversary, I woke up early and slipped out to grab some flowers before heading to the job site. Nothing fancy, just those yellow tulips she'd always loved. I left them on the kitchen counter with a note. 15 years. Still the best decision I ever made. See you tonight. When I got home that evening, the flowers were in a vase, which I took as a good sign. I showered quickly, put on the one decent suit I still owned, and found Vanessa in the bedroom getting ready. "You look beautiful," I said, and I meant it. She wore that blue dress I'd given her 2 Christmases ago. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd fallen for all those years ago. She gave me a small smile. "Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself." It was the warmest she'd been in weeks, and I felt a surge of hope. Maybe this night would turn things around for us. Dinner started off promising. We ordered a bottle of wine, a splurge we couldn't really afford. But what the hell? It was our anniversary. We made small talk about mutual friends, reminisced about our honeymoon in Maui, carefully avoiding any mention of my struggling business or our financial situation. "Remember that stupid snorkeling instructor?" I laughed. "The one who kept calling you water princess?" She smiled at the memory. "And you got so jealous you pretended you were drowning just to get his attention off me." I wasn't pretending that hard. That current was no joke. For a moment, the years fell away. This was us, the real us, before mortgages and business loans and sleepless nights. But halfway through the main course, her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it the first time. The second time, she glanced at it quickly and put it away. By the third buzz, she excused herself to the bathroom, taking her phone with her. When she returned 10 minutes later, something had changed. Her smile seemed forced, her laughter a beat too late. She kept checking the time, and when I suggested dessert, she claimed she was feeling tired. Early day tomorrow, she said. Big presentation at work. I paid the bill, wincing internally at the dent it made in our already stretched finances, and we drove home mostly in silence. I tried to hold her hand across the center console, but she kept repositioning herself, fiddling with the radio, checking her phone. At home, she headed straight for the bathroom. I'm going to take a shower, she said, already pulling pins from her hair. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the living room, wondering what had gone wrong. Had I said something? Done something? Or was this just where we were now? Two people who couldn't even manage to connect on their anniversary? When she emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in her robe, her hair wet around her shoulders, she looked distracted. I'm sorry about tonight, I said, setting down my glass. I know things haven't been great lately, with the business and all the stress. It's fine, Jerome, she cut me off. I'm just tired. Let's not do this now. She kissed me on the cheek, a quick, obligatory peck, and disappeared into the bedroom. I stayed up a while longer, nursing my drink, trying to figure out how to bridge the growing gap between us. Little did I know, that gap was already wider than I could possibly imagine. The day after our anniversary was like any other. I left early for a job site. Vanessa headed to her advertising agency. Things had been so strained between us lately that our routine had become mechanical, two planets orbiting the same space without ever colliding. I came home earlier than usual that evening, bone-tired from hauling drywall all day. The house was quiet. Vanessa had texted she'd be working late again. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and slouched onto the couch, flipping through channels without really watching anything. That's when I noticed Vanessa's tablet on the coffee table. She'd been using it constantly lately, always keeping it close, the screen angled away from me. I'd never been the suspicious type. Never had reason to be. But something about her behavior at dinner last night kept nagging at me. I picked up the tablet, just intending to move it so I could put my feet up. When the screen lit up, I saw she'd left her email open, and right there at the top was a message from someone named Chris. My thumb hovered over the screen. This was her private correspondence. I'd never snooped on Vanessa before, had always trusted her completely. But the subject line caught my eye. Last night was amazing. I told myself I was being paranoid. Chris could be a woman, could be a colleague, could be about some work project they'd finished. But deep down I knew. I clicked on a message, and the world I thought I knew shattered into a million pieces. Can't stop thinking about you, it began. The way you taste, the sounds you make when I'm inside you. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My hand started shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the tablet. I forced myself to keep reading. The email was graphic, detailed, talking about their encounter the night before, my anniversary night, and making plans for the weekend. Apparently, Chris had a trip coming up, but wanted to make up for lost time when he returned. I scrolled back through their correspondence, messages stretching back months. The earliest ones were innocent enough, flirty, but plausibly deniable. Then they grew more explicit, more intimate. They'd been sleeping together for at least 2 months. All those late nights at work, all those girls' nights out, all those yoga classes and shopping trips. Lies. Every single one. I took screenshots of everything, emailing them to myself. My mind was oddly methodical despite the hurricane of emotions raging inside me. I knew I needed evidence. Knew I couldn't face her without it. When I heard her key in the lock 2 hours later, I had the tablet back exactly where I'd found it, the screen dark. I was still on the couch, the same untouched beer beside me, now warm. She walked in looking slightly disheveled, her lipstick faded, her hair a bit messy. "You're home early," she said, sounding surprised. "Yeah," I replied, my voice coming from somewhere far away. "Finished up sooner than expected." She smiled, the same smile I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago, and said she was going to take a shower. As I listened to the water running, I wondered how I'd ever look at her the same way again. I spent the next day in a fog. Somehow, I managed to finish the kitchen remodel, though I couldn't tell you how. My body went through the motions while my mind replayed those emails over and over. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected Vanessa was capable of this kind of betrayal. That night, I got home late. The house was quiet except for the sound of the TV coming from our bedroom. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching Vanessa propped up against the pillows, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled, That same smile that used to make my heart skip a beat. "Hey, you," she said. "Long day." I nodded, unable to form words. The rage and pain I'd been suppressing all day threatened to explode, but I held it together. I needed to be calculated about this. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and stared at my reflection. The man looking back at me seemed older somehow, worn down by a weight he never asked to carry. When I returned to the bedroom, Vanessa had set her phone aside and patted the space next to her. I sat on the edge of the bed, keeping distance between us. "You okay?" she asked, frowning slightly. "You're acting weird." "Just tired," I said, the biggest understatement of my life. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. Then she leaned forward, her hand reaching for my face, pulling me toward her for our usual goodnight kiss. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "I'd kiss you, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." Vanessa froze, her face inches from mine, eyes wide with shock. For a split second, she looked confused, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. Then realization dawned, and all the color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, but the tremor in her voice gave her away. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots I'd taken. I handed it to her, watching as she scrolled through her own words, her own betrayal laid bare. "Jerome, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Don't insult me by lying again." Tears welled up in her eyes. "It was a mistake," she pleaded. "It didn't mean anything." I almost laughed at that. "Didn't mean anything? You've been sleeping with him for months, Vanessa. On our anniversary. In our bed, for all I know." She flinched at that, confirming my suspicion. "Jerome, please." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "We can fix this. We can get counseling, work through it." I stood up, needing distance between us. "There's nothing to fix. You broke us. You broke everything." I grabbed a pillow and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me, panic rising in her voice. "To sleep on the couch," I said. "I can't be in the same bed as you tonight. Or maybe ever again." The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. I was a zombie, going through the motions of life without really living it. Wake up, work, come home, sleep, or try to sleep on the couch that was killing my back. Rinse and repeat. Vanessa kept trying to fix things. At first, she was all waterworks and apologies, following me around the house with red-rimmed eyes, begging for a second chance. When that didn't work, she switched tactics. She'd walk around in skimpy outfits, accidentally brush against me in the kitchen, try to remind me of what I was missing out on. "We need to talk about this, Jerome," she'd say, her voice soft and pleading. "Nothing to talk about." I'd respond, then find a reason to leave the room. She left pamphlets for marriage counselors on the coffee table, sent me links to articles about healing after infidelity, even had her mother call me. That was a new low. The woman had the nerve to tell me that all marriages hit rough patches, and that I should be the bigger person. I wanted to ask if her husband had ever found her in bed with another man, but I bit my tongue. No point dragging more people into this mess. At work, I was barely holding it together. Nearly took my thumb off with a circular saw when my mind wandered to images of Vanessa with Chris. My crew was starting to notice something was off. Miller, my foreman, finally cornered me after I measured the same piece of trim 3 times and still got it wrong. "Boss, you're a million miles away. Everything okay at home?" "Right as rain." I lied, the words tasting bitter. "Just didn't sleep well." He didn't buy it, but was decent enough not to push. "If you need anything, just say the word." One night, about 3 weeks after D-Day, I came home to find Vanessa in the kitchen, cooking my favorite meal, pot roast with all the fixings. The table was set with the good dishes we never used, candles lit, wine poured. "What's all this?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. "I thought we could have dinner together," she said, hopeful. "Like we used to." I stared at the spread, at the effort she'd put in. For a split second, I felt a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. Then I remember the emails, the lies, the betrayal that had destroyed 15 years of trust. "Not hungry," I said, and walked past her to the bathroom. I took the longest shower of my life, letting the hot water beat down on my aching shoulders, hoping it would wash away some of the anger and pain. When I finally emerged, the kitchen was dark. The food was covered with plastic wrap in the fridge. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen. I found a note on the coffee table next to my pillow and blanket. I'm staying at Jen's tonight. I don't know how to reach you anymore. I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Then I went to sleep in my own bed for the first time in weeks, spreading out across the entire mattress. Try not to notice that even after all this time, her side still smelled like her perfume. I was between a rock and a hard place, and the walls were closing in. I couldn't keep living like this, but I couldn't seem to find my way out either. After 6 weeks of living like strangers under the same roof, something had to give. That something turned out to be me. I came home one evening to find Vanessa waiting in the living room. No candles this time. No fancy dinner. Just her, sitting in the armchair, hands folded in her lap. "We need to talk," she said. Not a request, a statement. I dropped my tool belt by the door with a heavy clunk. "I'm beat, Vanessa. Not tonight." Then when her voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. "It's been over a month, Jerome. You can't keep stonewalling me forever. Watch me," I muttered, heading for the kitchen. She followed me. "I made a terrible mistake. I know that. I've apologized 1,000 different ways. I ended things with Chris immediately. I've offered to go to counseling. What more do you want from me?" I grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped the cap with more force than necessary. "What do I want? I want a time machine. I want to go back to when my wife wasn't screwing some guy behind my back." "That's not fair," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been trying so hard." "Fair." The word hit me like a sucker punch. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you were with him on our anniversary? Was it fair that you came home and kissed me with the same mouth that—" I couldn't even finish the sentence. "It was a mistake," she shouted, tears streaming now. "People make mistakes, Jerome. Are you so perfect?" Something snapped inside me. The dam I'd built to hold back my rage finally broke. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. A mistake is burning dinner. Screwing another man for months isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A series of choices. Every time you texted him, every time you made up a lie about where you were going, every time you got naked with him. Those were all choices, Vanessa. She flinched, but I wasn't done. You chose him over me. Over us. Over 15 years of marriage. So don't stand there talking about fair. I'm still your wife, she whispered. Doesn't that count for anything? I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. The woman I'd built my life around. The woman I'd have died for. Now a stranger wearing my wife's face. Not anymore, I said quietly. Not in any way that matters. I set down my beer, still untouched, and walked past her to the spare room, where I'd stashed a duffel bag. I started throwing clothes into it, just the essentials. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, panic rising in her eyes. What are you doing? Well, I should have done weeks ago, I said, not looking at her. I'm done living like this. You're leaving me? Her voice cracked. Just like that. I zipped up the bag. You left me the moment you decided our marriage wasn't enough for you. I walked past her, pausing only to grab my wallet and keys. Where will you go? She asked, following me to the door. Miller's offered me a spare room until I figure things out, I said, my hand on the doorknob. I'll be by this weekend to get the rest of my stuff. Jerome, please, she grabbed my arm. Don't do this. We can fix this. I gently removed her hand. Some things can't be fixed, Vanessa. Some things, once broken, stay broken. Staying at Miller's place gave me the breathing room I desperately needed. His spare room was barely bigger than a closet, but it was mine, a space untainted by memories of Vanessa. Miller didn't ask questions, just handed me a beer when I arrived and said, "Stay as long as you need, boss." After a week, I contacted a lawyer, guy named Harrington who specialized in divorces. No-nonsense type who laid it all out straight. Oregon's a no-fault state, he explained. The infidelity won't factor into the financial settlement, but the evidence you gathered could be leverage in negotiations. I nodded, feeling hollow inside. 15 years of marriage reduced to assets and liabilities on a spreadsheet. Vanessa didn't take the news well. When I told her I'd filed for divorce, she broke down completely. "You can't do this," she sobbed over the phone. "We can work through this, Jerome. People recover from affairs all the time. I'm not people, Vanessa. I'm me, and I can't get past this. So that's it. You're just throwing away 15 years. I didn't throw anything away, I said, keeping my voice steady. You did that all on your own. The paperwork was straightforward. We didn't have kids, thank God. The house would be sold, proceeds split. My business remained mine. Her retirement account remained hers. Cut and dried. I moved into a small apartment closer to my current job site. Nothing fancy, just a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen/living room combo. But it was mine. No ghosts, no memories. Miller helped me move what little I wanted from the house. My tools, some clothes, a few photos that didn't include Vanessa. She wasn't there when we packed up. Probably for the best. 2 days later, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes. "You forgot this," she said, holding out a small wooden box my grandfather had made. "Thanks," I said, taking it without inviting her in. She lingered in the hallway. "Jerome, please. Don't go through with this divorce. Give us another chance." I sighed, suddenly tired beyond words. "There is no us anymore, Vanessa. What we had is gone. I made one mistake." For months, I cut her off. With premeditation. Behind my back. While I was killing myself trying to save my business, so we could have a future together. She flinched but didn't back down. "I know what I did was terrible. But everyone deserves a second chance." "Maybe," I conceded. "But I deserve peace more." I gently closed the door, leaned against it, and for the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt certain I was making the right decision. The divorce was almost finalized when Vanessa made her last stand. It had been 3 months since I moved out, 3 months of rebuilding my life one brick at a time. My business was slowly turning around. I'd landed a major renovation contract for a downtown office building. I was starting to feel like myself again, or at least a new version of myself. Then came the text messages. At first, they were casual. "Saw that Craftsman table you liked is on sale. Remember that Mexican place we found in Seattle? It's closing down." Little breadcrumbs of our shared history, as if reminding me what I was walking away from. I didn't respond, but they kept coming. Memories, inside jokes, questions about my day. When I continued to ignore them, the tone shifted. "I miss you so much it hurts. I can't sleep in our bed without you. Please give me another chance to make things right." I blocked her number, but she started emailing instead. When I blocked those, she sent handwritten letters to my apartment. It was like trying to outrun a shadow. No matter how fast I moved, she found a way to follow. The final letter was different. No pleas for reconciliation, no tearful reminiscing. Just a simple proposal. We don't have to remarry. We could just live together again. No strings, no pressure. Just us, finding our way back. I stared at those words for a long time, amazed at her audacity. Did she really think I was that desperate? That lonely? That I'd settle for being roommates with a woman who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way? I picked up my phone and texted her one last time, "Go cohabit with your boyfriend." It was cruel, maybe, but necessary, like cauterizing a wound. Some clean breaks are needed for proper healing. She didn't contact me again after that. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday. I signed the papers in my lawyer's office, feeling strangely calm. 15 years of marriage ended with a signature and a handshake. Harrington wished me luck, handed me a folder of documents, and, just like that, I was a single man again. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment with a glass of bourbon, watching the sunset. I thought I'd feel more: sadness, anger, regret. But all I felt was a quiet certainty that I'd made the right choice. My phone buzzed with a text from Miller. "Divorce official?" "Yep," I replied. "Free and clear. First round's on me tomorrow," he wrote back. I smiled, took another sip of bourbon, and, for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. 6 months after the divorce, I barely recognized my life, in a good way. The construction company was back on solid ground. I'd hired 2 new guys, both veterans who knew their way around a job site. We were booked solid 3 months out, mostly high-end renovations that paid well. My apartment didn't feel temporary anymore. I'd invested in decent furniture, hung some artwork, even got a few plants that were somehow still alive. It wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable. Mine. Miller and I still grabbed beers every Friday, a tradition that had evolved from him checking on me to genuine friendship. He'd been through his own divorce years ago, and his perspective helped more than any therapist could have. "You ever hear from her?" he asked one night, halfway through his second IPA. "Not since the paperwork was finalized," I said. "Mutual friend told me she moved to Seattle. Got a job at some big marketing firm up there." "You dodged a bullet," he said, not for the first time. But had I? Some nights, in the quiet hours before dawn, I still found myself thinking about her. Not with longing. That ship had sailed, but with a strange sort of detachment, like examining an old scar that had finally healed over. 15 years was a long time to share with someone. The good memories were still there, buried beneath the betrayal. I wasn't ready to excavate them yet, but I knew they existed. I'd started dating again, cautiously. Nothing serious, just coffee or dinner here and there. Women I met through work or friends of friends. It felt awkward, like learning to walk again after a long illness. But it was progress. One Saturday morning, I was at the farmer's market downtown when I spotted her. Not Vanessa, but a woman I'd gone out with twice the previous month. Hannah. She was examining tomatoes, unaware of my presence. I almost turned and walked the other way, but something made me approach instead. Those aren't ripe yet, I said. The ones at the stand around the corner are better. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. The renovation expert knows his tomatoes, too. I'm a man of many talents, I replied, returning her smile. We ended up having coffee, then lunch, then dinner that night. Conversation flowed easily between us. She was divorced too, no kids, like me, and carried her own scars with a grace I admired. When I drove her home that evening, she invited me in for a nightcap. I hesitated, then accepted. Standing in her kitchen as she poured us each a glass of wine, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Possibility. Not happiness, exactly, but the potential for it. A door cracking open after being locked for so long. You okay? She asked, handing me my glass. Yeah, I said, meaning it for once. I think I am. 1 year after my divorce from Vanessa was finalized, I stood in the backyard of my new house. Not a rental, but a place I'd bought with my own money, a small craftsman with good bones and plenty of character. The kind of place I'd always wanted to fix up. My crew had helped me renovate it over weekends and evenings, transforming it room by room into something that felt like home. Hannah moved through the crowd of guests, stopping to chat with Miller and his wife, laughing at something he said. We've been dating for 6 months now, taking it slow, both of us carrying baggage from failed marriages, both wary of making the same mistakes again. But there was something solid between us, something built on honesty and respect that gave me hope for what might come next. Need another beer? Rick, Miller's brother-in-law and my newest hire, held out a cold bottle. Thanks, I said, taking it gratefully. The housewarming party had been Hannah's idea. A fresh start deserves a celebration, she'd insisted. Looking around at my friends, colleagues, and neighbors mingling in the late afternoon sunshine, I had to admit she was right. I'd heard through the grapevine that Vanessa was engaged again, some executive at her new firm in Seattle. The news didn't sting like I might have expected. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure, like the final period at the end of a long and complicated sentence. Hannah caught my eye across the yard and made her way over, sliding an arm around my waist. Penny, for your thoughts. Just thinking about how much changes in a year, I said, pulling her close. If you told me back then that I'd be here now, I wouldn't have believed it. Back then, you couldn't see past the pain, she said softly. That's how it always is. She understood in a way few people could. Her ex-husband had left her for his secretary. The oldest cliché in the book, but no less devastating for its predictability. We'd each weathered our own storms and emerged stronger on the other side. Later, after the guests had gone and we were cleaning up together, Hannah asked, "Do you ever regret it? The divorce, I mean." I paused, bottle in hand, considering the question seriously. No, I said finally. I regret that it had to happen. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But I don't regret walking away when I did. She nodded, understanding. Some betrayals you can't come back from. Exactly. I set down the bottle and turned to face her. Trust is like glass. Once it's shattered, you can try to piece it back together, but it'll never be as strong as it was. The cracks will always be there, waiting to split open again. Pretty bleak outlook, she teased, but her eyes were serious. Not bleak, I corrected her. Just realistic. It's why what we have matters so much to me. We started with eyes wide open. No illusions, no fairy tales. She stepped closer, her hand finding mine. To clear-eyed beginnings, then. Later that night, lying in bed with Hannah sleeping peacefully beside me, I thought about the long, painful journey that had brought me here. The discovery of Vanessa's betrayal had been the worst moment of my life, a nuclear explosion that had leveled everything I thought I knew. But standing in the ashes, I found the courage to rebuild something new, something stronger. If you're reading this and going through something similar, know this: it gets better. Not overnight, not without work, but gradually, surely, the pain recedes. The wound stops bleeding. You learn to trust again, not blindly, but wisely. You discover that one person's betrayal doesn't define what all relationships will be. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find what truly matters. And sometimes, what waits on the other side of devastation is better than anything you could have imagined before.